Mute. There, can you hear me?
Good morning. How are you?
Good, good morning. You know what? I think I just did my intro on mute, Miss Rhonda. So if you don't mind, I'm just gonna have you jump in there. I had a whole introduction. I've been on mute this entire time.
Okay. I
You guys,
thought it
this
was
is some of the
me
things
at
that
first.
happen. So no worries. Thank you so much. Well, then I'm just gonna let Miss Rhonda have the floor. I'm not gonna put you guys through all of that again. Um, thank you so much. I'm gonna go on mute and I'm gonna let you have it.
We're ready, so I jumped on just in time then. Okay. So, good morning, everybody. So, my name is Rhonda James Woolard, and I'm a sexual abuse survivor who has depression with anxiety. And how many of you know someone with a mental health diagnosis or should have a mental health diagnosis? So when I turned 30, life was at its best. But I noticed that I was having mood swings. And at one moment, I would be so happy. And then the next moment, I would be sad. And I thought about it, I would call it the blues. But life was good. So why was I feeling this way? And I knew that something was wrong. So I told my primary doctor, and he told me I was depressed. So he put me on Prozac. And I was like, no, I did not like that because that meant that I was crazy. So I refused to take the medication for that reason. And of course, I felt like I didn't need it because I had the mentality stay busy, stay strong. Black people don't get depressed. You're too blessed to be stressed. Handle it. Don't let it handle you. And I don't know how my children knew, but they knew that I was taking medication. So they started saying things like, Mom, you aren't taking your medicine, are you? So it made me start thinking about it. So I started taking my medication. So once I started taking my medication, it made me realize that it was making a difference. So divine intervention. So I started taking my medication consistently for years. But honestly, I didn't get an official diagnosis by a psychiatrist until around 2017. Life was really life. Things were just going bad in my life. My son had just been diagnosed with AIDS. I was dealing with family issues. I was dealing with weight issues. My mental health was just out of control. And my new primary doctor recommended me to get treatment. So she gave me a list of different psychiatrists that I could go to, and I chose Max Psychiatry. And she diagnosed me with anxiety, depression with anxiety. So my first diagnosis by a psychiatrist. She also prescribed me medication to help me not only with my depression, but she prescribed medication for me for my anxiety and my sleep issues. Because at that point, insomnia ruled. She recommended for me to see a therapist to talk through my issues, and I started that also. And another thing that was key that she constantly recommended for me was exercise, exercise. I decided to lose weight, so my psychologist was more focused with my weight. I showed up consistently to my appointments and I started to change. I grew so much and I felt better than I had ever felt. I lost weight. I learned to set boundaries with my family. I learned to put myself first. But I did forget to tell you that in 2023, I had a major depressive episode, but I had a lot of support. With that depressive episode, I could barely get out of bed. I had had depression for years, and I thought that I knew my depression. But with the support of my primary doctor, my psychiatrist, and my therapist, who were all there for me, I was able to make it through that episode. If they wouldn't have, I don't think I would be here today. And I have to say, yes, I am a woman of faith. Yes, I believe that God is a healer. But I also know that I am a woman who needs medication. And I am one who needs professional service that God has created. And I want people to know that you can pray and still go to therapy. You can trust God and still talk to a counselor. You can hold on to your faith and still take care of your mind, because healthy spirituality and mental health care should go hand in hand, not against each other. And some of the things that I have accomplished by treating my mental health, by using the services that are available and displaying, getting rid of the stigma that I had, are as the following, but are not limited to. I was the first African American DSS director in Washington County, North Carolina. I was just named 100 Women in Business, 100 Women to Watch. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I'm a coach. I'm a wife. I'm a mother of two. I'm a grandmother of one. I believe I said I was a wife. I'm a sister. I'm an aunt. I'm a friend. And another key component in my journey was the healing power of forgiveness, learning to forgive others and learning to forgive myself, which you can learn more in my book, A Time to Heal, 7 Steps to Healing and Forgiveness After Sexual Abuse and Assault. And you can order the book or connect with me at yourtimetoheal.net. That's yourtimetoheal.net. Thank you.
There we go. Thank you so much, Miss Rhonda, for sharing your story today. I appreciate the vulnerability it takes to put yourself out there as a person in our community who struggled and suffered from mental illnesses and who's brave enough to express how much getting help actually does help us in this community. I appreciate you for sharing your story so much. Thank you so much. That was beautiful and powerful. Anyone, you guys read her book, find her on social media. She gave you all of her information. Please, and Miss Rhonda, if you don't mind putting that information in the chat, and I'll make sure that I update my oh my goodness, description. There we go. Update the description to include your information so that everyone knows how to get in touch with you, because you are a very big, powerful example of what mental health does to this community. And I thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You are very welcome. Um, Mute. I keep going back on mute. My phone, my break. It's we like I said, we had another speaker scheduled for today, but I always have a backup because she was unable to attend. So I'm just going to share my story. You guys, are you guys okay with that? You
Yes.
guys, okay, it's really long, so just be ready, okay? So, um, I did miss the introduction because I was on mute this whole time. So first, I want to say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everyone, and welcome to this virtual summit. Wherever you're coming in from today, whether you're watching from your home office, your kitchen, your table, or sneaking in during a lunch break, please know that this is an absolute honor to have you all here today. Thank you so much for showing up. So again, I was on mute the first 30 minutes when I was saying all of this. So apparently you guys didn't hear it. And I want to thank you all because again, whether you're tuning in live or if you're going to watch it on replay on my YouTube channel, as long as that message gets out there, that's the big point, you know. So please just know that it is an honor to have you here. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for creating this sacred, for coming to this sacred space that we all create, even across screens and time zones. So, mwah. For those of us in the Black, Indigenous, people of color, or the minority community, showing up for something like this is already an act of courage. It means that you've chosen to press pause on the daily demands, dedicated time to the most critical conversation that we can have, the state of our collective mental health. Today, we are not here to talk about a trend. We are here to talk about the truth, the unspoken weight that we carry, and finally, and how we finally intentionally choose to lay down that stigma. When we talk about mental health in the Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, we acknowledge that our mental health distress is often not an individual failure. It is a direct result of systematic stress. Think of it like this: every community is running a race. We are running that race, carrying three invisible heavy weights, three different things that are kind of blocking us from being able to address our mental health issues. And the first is the generational trauma. As you heard Miss Rhonda speak, you know, people are saying pray about it, giving us all of these alternative methods then to just go get help. We carry the trauma and history in our DNA, whether it's an inherited pain from slavery, colonization, systematic violence, or forced displacement. That stress does not simply just go away. It's passed down. It shows up in our bodies as chronic illnesses. It shows up in our minds as high anxiety, hypervigilance, complex PTSD, and other things that we choose to overlook because that's how we were programmed. And we're often asked to heal from these wounds that were inflicted long before we were born. And too often we are not given the language, the space, or the cultural support to do that work. We are the generation that must choose to be healed. We must break that cycle. And the second weight is the constant threat. The second thing that we have going on is the ongoing trauma of racism and microaggressions. It's the constant low grade humming of threat, the fear to stop, the fear of being the only one in the room of color, and the exhausting emotional labor of the code of switching just to be accepted. We have to switch who we are. We have to turn off being black. We have to turn off being Muslim. We have to watch being Asian. We have to turn off everything that makes us who we are so that we can be deemed acceptable. And this continuous performance chips away at our sense of self worth and tells us that our authentic emotional state is dangerous or unwelcome. And it is not the case. It is not an unwelcome thing to be a black woman walking into a room full of people that don't look like you. This is what fuels our need to suppress our pain and contributes to the chronic burnout and emotional exhaustion. The second is the weight of being strong. Black women have this the worst because we're looked at as strong black women. We have that title of strong black women. So finally, we have to discuss this heavy weight, the cultural pressure to be unbreakable. We have been conditioned. We have been conditioned to believe that enduring suffering is a sign of resilience. It is not, and that admitting mental distress is a sign of weakness, or worse, that is a betrayal of the fight to our ancestors, because of course they didn't fight to go through everything that they went through for us to just sit here and express that we are dealing with mental health issues. That's something that is a weight that is put on our shoulders, that if we are weak, then we are a betrayal to our ancestors. This myth of the strong black woman, this stoic elder, or the silent man is an absolute who is an absolute mental health crisis, a man who's in mental health crisis, it traps us. It teaches us that our mental health needs are inconvenient and that our only option is to suffer in silence while we are completely depleted. No, that's not true. That's not true. This combination of weights bring us to the core issue of the mental health crisis, and it is fueled by being overlooked by both the outside world and sometimes also by ourselves, because we're programmed to overlook having an anxiety attack and saying it's just us being overly emotional or overly sensitive. When the world constantly tells you that your feelings don't matter, you internalize that message. You start to believe that lie, that your pain is invalid, that your depression, your anxiety, or your grief is something that you should just get over. This internalizes the shame. This internalized shame is a foundation for mental distress. We teach ourselves to be silent keepers of pain that was never ours in the first place. These are things that were put on us by the beliefs of our elders and those before them. And let's be honest, the journey of seeking help for us, accessing mental health, is not that simple. It's not. It's an act of vulnerability that comes with real historic risk. We face the stigma within our community, the fear that our family will call us crazy or tell us just to pray it away or meditate it away or go here, go there, but not to actually seek any real help. Then, when we do decide to seek help, the medical racism and the mistrust that goes along with that, the historical fear of being misdiagnosed, over medicated, or being dismissed by providers who do not understand our cultural context or our lived experiences. So we're not meeting people on our level, our peers who understand the stress that we carry along with us just being who we are. And third is the lack of cultural competent care. That is exhausting, and it sometimes re-traumatizes us to search for a therapist who understands the complex the complexity of being both a person of color and a person of trauma. We need healers, not just clinicians. Because of these barriers, we often wait on our mental health healing. We do. We wait, and we end up putting ourselves into a full blown crisis before we even decide that that's when we're going to reach out. And this is why our burden is so heavy. This is actually what I did. I waited until I was in a full blown mental health crisis before I finally reached out for help. And we are constantly fighting for our survival, but we are too often denied a space to heal. If this system is designed to break us, then our collective mandate today is to actively, consciously reclaim our minds. This is our resistance. This is our revolution. We have to choose to stop letting the stories be written for us. We need to stop letting that narrative that was written for us define our future and start reframing our core that drives our journey. Reframing is the act of grabbing a pen and paper and writing down the meaning of our pain. And it doesn't have to be figuratively. I do personally get a pen and paper and I write. But some of us can do it, in your mind. You can sit down and say, my trauma is not proof of my brokenness, it's proof of my incredible mental endurance. And it is turning certain questions into actionable responses. This isn't toxic positivity, it's cognitive justice. It's taking the pain that was inflicted upon you and using it as training in empathy, training in boundaries, and training in resilience. You don't forget the past, you never do. You just got to stop letting it drive the car. You take the wheel. You take the wheel and you drive the car. And for us to deal with self love, it's not an indulgence, it's a revolutionary act. It is the difficult daily work of unlearning generations of self neglect and internalized trauma. It's making the choice to protect your peace. It's putting down the invisible armor. It's choosing to journal. It's choosing the journal, figuratively or physically, or the culturally competent therapist, finding somebody that's on your level. And it doesn't have to be a person of your race. It could be someone who just they are culturally sensitive to your needs, and they are ready to meet those needs. So a therapist that is ready to meet, let me put the pen down, to meet those needs. And the boundary setting conversations, even when it feels terrifying. It's not okay for someone to just walk up and grab your hair. That was one of the biggest things. I have dreads. You know, how many people want to walk up to me and say, "Oh my God, this is so pretty." To set that boundary and say, "I don't respect, I don't appreciate that. Please step away." You know, we feel like we have to allow. Excuse the background noise. You guys might hear it a lot. We feel like we have to allow someone to disrespect our personal boundaries to make them feel comfortable, and that's not the case. We should be okay with having those conversations. Your mental health is not a luxury. It is the foundation of your own liberation. When you heal, when you heal your mind, when you heal your body, when you heal your spirit, you empower your entire legacy. So I know this is all heavy. And before we dive into the rest of my story, I want to bring this context home. I am not just speaking as the facilitator, I'm speaking as someone who has been and who was born carrying the exact weight, the weight of generational trauma, the weight of being overlooked, and of almost losing my life to the silence. I spent most of my life wearing a mask of strength until a devastating personal tragedy that shattered it shattered that mask and forced a mental breakdown. And that was my ultimate wake up call. It forced me to confront the lies that I believed, that my pain was inconvenient and that seeking help was a sign of failure. My journey is proof that even in the deepest, darkest place, you can make a choice to rise. You can reclaim the narrative. You can choose to make your mental health your mandate. You can make it mandatory. Your mental health. In the keynotes that may follow today or tomorrow, you will learn deep stories of personal growth from those who were beaten, buried, or just dealt with loss, and how those stories were used as tools to reframe the radical self love to survive, heal, and finally stand here today. So when you hear any story, whether it's my story today or any other story, I don't want you to just hear those stories. I want you to hear your own resilience. I want you to hear the voice that is inside of you, that is ready to choose peace. This is the stories. These are the stories of rising strong, reclaiming our minds in the BIPOC community. So it's Black, Indigenous, People of Color. So you're going to hear me break it down to BIPOC just for time's sake. So let's begin, okay? So first, my story is rising strong and reclaiming our minds. And what does rising strong mean to you? To face every battle, every challenge, and come out on the other side stronger, more resilient, and more powerful. What does that mean to you? I'm gonna let you think about that for a second, just to understand what does rising strong mean to you. So when I say rising strong, I'm not talking about a motivational phrase you slap on a t-shirt or a post or a hashtag. I'm talking about the grit that it takes to get back up after life knocks you down. I'm talking about the silent battles, the ones that no one sees, the ones you fight, the ones you fight in your heart. But it's in when your heart is shattered, those that they still show up. You know, the resilience that still shows up. I'm sorry. These are the fights against complex PTSD, the emotional exhaustion, the anxiety, and the depression that trauma leaves behind. I'm talking about choosing to heal, to grow, to reclaim your power when the world tells you to stay broken. Rising strong means, again, to rewrite the story. It means turning the why means, those questions, why me? And to watch me. It means taking your pain, your past, and your scars and using them as fuel. It means to grow and to strive within yourself. Some of us were never handed peace. We had to fight for it. Some of us were never given a safe space to belong. We had to build one for ourselves. Some of us were told our voices did not matter, so we raised them anyway. And for many of us, particularly those who look like me, I'm a black woman. So look like me, anyone, a person of color, that fight isn't just personal, it's historical. We are constantly battling the story society tries to write for us, fighting to build a safe place in a world that wasn't built for peace, for our peace, and raising a voice that was intentionally designed to be suppressed. My personal struggle with trauma became amplified by the cultural weight that I was already carrying. And that is the essence of rising strong. Not perfection, not pretending that everything's okay, but standing in your truth. Crying if you need to, and still saying, I am not done yet. This space, this summit is this movement is about all of us who rose from the ashes, not polished, not pristine, but powerful. And if you're here today, it's because you know exactly what it means to keep going when giving up would be easier. So I invite you through every word shared today to learn, to learn and lean in, not just to the stories of strength, but into your own power. Because you are not just a survivor, you are a force. And it's your time to rise stronger than ever. So I want to share a story with you. It's about a little girl, and she was born in a storm, one that was not of her own making. Before she even was a thought, before she had a name, before she could cry out in pain, um, her story had already been written. This pain, this trauma had already been written into her life. Her story started with her father, who was 46 years older than her mother. He began molesting and beating her mother when she was 8 years old. And before that, it started with her grandmother, who was raped and beaten in her childhood, so on and so forth, which was why she allowed things to happen to her own children because she didn't understand the mental health and the trauma that she had endured and that it wasn't right. This is called generational trauma, or at least that's what we call it now. And as a black woman, I realized that trauma wasn't just in my family. It was the consequence of a system that tried to break my ancestors, leaving deep, unseen wounds that were passed down through silence and survival until I chose to stop the cycle. But back then, it was just called life. And all of the mental toll that of just life within our community created survival mechanisms like hypervigilance, emotional numbness, and deep seated fear. Excuse me. So, just at 2 days old, somebody put something in this little girl's bottle. Something made something that made her so sick that she almost didn't live. Her little body went through things that a newborn should never have had to go through. And for 10 months, this young girl fought to stay alive. Her heart stopped not once, not twice, but 3 times. 3 times, but she didn't go. She came back. Even then, even all the way back then, something inside of her refused to quit. And that was her first life, her first lessons in mental endurance, to have to fight, even as a newborn, not to die. But surviving wasn't the end of the storm. That was just the beginning. She made it those first 10 lives, but 10 months. But then she grew up in a house where love felt more like a performance than a promise. She was overlooked, ignored, and made to feel like her voice, her presence, her life was a problem. She learned quickly that speaking up came with consequences, so she got really good at being small. She smiled to hide the pain. She kept quiet to avoid the blows, the beatings, and she just played her part and kept her mental health quiet. This taught her a dangerous lesson about black mental health, that her distress was inconvenient, that the pain needed that her pain needed to be invisible, and that the performance, not wellness, but her performance was the key to survival. Being overlooked by the people who should have protected her became a foundation for a lifetime of silence. And the one person who was supposed to protect her, which was her mother, had her own wounds because remember, she was abused. She had deep ones. She was broken in ways that no one could imagine, and she didn't have anyone to help her fix those problems. And that pain, it spilled over and with fists, cruel words, and silence. But that little girl would show up in school every day, bruised and hurting, with the biggest smile on her face, because that smile was the only armor she had. She kept going day after day, year after year, but by the time she turned 14, something in her said enough. She thought being out in the streets would be safer, but it was wrong and added more trauma to her mental health. She fought, she fought every day to survive, but she found out the hard way that monsters don't just live inside of her home, they're out in the world too, and sometimes they're bigger and badder. They're out there waiting, watching, and ready to take advantage of girls or even young children like her who were out there in the world just trying to survive. And at 16, one of those monsters found her. He was 7 years older than her, controlling, violent, and dangerous. She saw the evil in his eyes and in his voice and in his smile. She tried everything she could to get away from him, but he got his hands on her and he trapped her. And what followed was 12 years of abuse, 12 long years of another kind of cage, manipulation, sodomy, torture, and darkness. But in this darkness something happened, something beautiful. She became a mother, and that changed everything. For the first time in her life, she understood love, real, deep, unconditional love. She looked into the eyes of her children, and something inside of her woke. She didn't want them to grow up in fear. She didn't want them to think that this was normal. So she started fighting again for them, for herself. And after 12 years, she got her freedom. But freedom, it didn't come with peace. It didn't come with healing. She thought out of the relationship and she thought that she had that peace, but she was still carrying everything that happened to her, that has ever happened to her, from the abuse from her mom through those 12 horrible years. And she found herself surrounded by people who didn't have her best interest at heart, who still did not point out the importance of her seeking help, who took advantage of her trauma and abuse and made her feel like she was family when she was just another person for them to manipulate. She wanted to feel accepted and allowed these people to abuse her because she didn't understand what she should have done, instead of following the suggestions of those who didn't have her best interest at heart. And they put her in dangerous situations. And as long as her children were safe, as long as she went to work, her children were safe, and they were okay. She never questioned if this was best for her. All this while trying to be strong for her kids, still trying to hold it together. And she was the textbook example of a strong black woman wearing a mask that looked like resilience, but actually was in a cage. She was in a cage. That resilience became a cage for her ignoring her mental health needs. That pressure to be strong made her fear getting help, because seeking it was like admitting defeat and letting everybody around her down. She did her best to work hard. She made a home for herself and for her children. She gave love, kind that she never got. And she poured everything she had into her children. Yes, she made mistakes, but they were hers. And she was trying. She was trying to build something new and real, trying to believe that there was more to life than just pain. She even went back to school. She wanted to get that degree, because when she was married, she wasn't even allowed to graduate high school. She had to sneak to get her GED. She wanted to prove that she was more than just this girl who had survived abuse. And then when she started to close that book in that chapter and open a new one, unthinkable happened. While she was away out of state with her partner, she was visiting his family, and someone that she knew, she got a call that no one should have ever have to receive, and it was that her son was shot. Her baby was gone. He was only 19 years old, a beautiful young man who wanted to heal a broken world himself. This storm made every other storm before look like a drizzle. People turned on her, judged her, talked about her behind her back, and his biological father got his hands on the insurance money and he stole it. This was the worst. She was betrayed by someone she called a sister, and she was put out in the streets, homeless with her two younger children, isolated. And the man that she was with, he tried to be there for her, but his family, they didn't really like her, and it kind of tore everything apart. But that wasn't the worst part. It was the day she got an envelope, and it was her son's death certificate, just a piece of paper, but it shattered her. She sat in that car. and she held it in her hands and she screamed. Not cried, not sobbed, she screamed from a place so deep it didn't feel human. And that scream wasn't just grief, it was the sound of a lifetime of suppressed trauma exploding. And it was the ultimate mental health breakdown. And no one came for her. She was alone. And in that moment, she almost gave up, truly. She thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this world has finally broken me. But something stopped her. It wasn't a miracle, it wasn't a phone call, it was her son. Even gone, his light was still there. She felt him, she heard him, and she remembered that she still had these two babies who needed her, two children who were watching, waiting, hoping that their mom would keep fighting. So she did. And that day, in that car, she didn't just survive, she made a choice to remember who she was, a choice to fight like she had from the beginning when she was that little girl who was poisoned, a choice to rise, a choice to rise, not just physically, but mentally, even with a shattered heart. That little girl, the one who was poisoned at 2 days old, beaten, raped, silenced, abandoned, judged, and buried under loss. That little girl, that was me. And I'm still here. I'm still standing, still rising. I was the one who had to get up. I was the one who had to say, no, I won't let this evil world win. That was the day I chose to truly heal. This choice is the first choice in reclaiming, was the first choice in reclaiming my mental health. And was it easy? No. Did it happen overnight? Hell no. I'm still healing to this day. But the truth, the lesson is this: no matter how bad things are, you still have a choice to heal, a choice to rise, a choice to walk in a new chapter of your life, no matter how hard it is to close behind you. And no matter how hard that chapter is to close behind you. And make no mistake, I didn't just close that chapter, I burned it. And now I'm writing a new one in my own voice, on my terms, and I'm not asking for permission from anyone. I didn't just share this story to just to shock you or for pity. I shared it because I know someone, at least one person has been carrying silence like second skin. Someone who's still trying to make sense of their pain, still battling the shame that was never theirs to begin with. I shared this story because too many of us are taught to survive, but never taught how to live and how to heal. And for us in this BIPOC community, that healing must begin with mental health. And if my journey can be a mirror for even one person to see their strength, to see their worth and their power, then every tear, every scar, every moment that I almost gave up, it has all been worth it. It has purpose. And by the end of this, I don't want you to just hear my story. I want you to feel your own rising within you. I want you to understand that healing isn't a finish line, it's a choice you make. Sometimes every day you have to get up and make this choice over and over and over again, no matter how dark your past may be. And you have the power to reframe it, to build something from the rubble, to rewrite a new chapter, well, to write a new chapter, not rewrite, to start a new chapter that reflects who you are, not who the world tried to make you believe, not who you had to minimize yourself to be make feel comfortable. This isn't just about survival, it's about freedom, it's about reclaiming yourself. Now, I want you to know that hearing, I now I know, I'm sorry, now that I know that hearing all of that leaves you wondering how. How do you even begin to move forward from something like that? How do you carry so much pain and not let it define you? How do you overcome the mental conditioning to suffer in silence? Truth is, I didn't magically wake up and become healed. I had to wrestle with everything I've been through. I had to make the conscious choice not to just survive, but to take back ownership of my story. And that journey began with something simple. It was simple, but it was powerful, shifting how I saw shifting how I saw what I had lived through. Eventually, I learned about reframing, defining reframing, and it changed everything. It changed everything. So defining reframe changed everything. For most of my life, I lived in a story that was written for me. It was a story rooted in pain. It was a story rooted in abandonment and survival. And I was told I wasn't enough. I was shown that love had conditions. I was handed trauma like it was my birthright. That external narrative became my internal narrative. The voice of my anxiety. It became the voice of my anxiety and my depression. But there came a point when I realized that I did not have to live in that version of my story anymore. Reframe wasn't just a concept for me, it became my lifeline. It meant grabbing hold of a pen and rewriting those experiences, what those experiences meant to me, not denying that they happened, not pretending that the pain didn't exist, but choosing to see beyond it, choosing to make meaning out of the madness. I had to reframe. I had to reframe how I saw myself. I was no longer that broken girl who had to beg for love or shrink to survive. I began to see the fire inside of me, the one that kept me alive through the beatings, through the betrayal, through losing my child, and not as a curse, but proof of my power. Every scar, every moment that I wanted to give up but I didn't, that became the fuel. The refrain did not come easy. It did not. It honored it. It honored it. It honored my past, and then it dared me to build something new from it. I had to stop seeing my past as evidence of my brokenness, a depression, a worthlessness, the anxiety. I had to start seeing it as proof of my mental endurance, a resilience, of a narrative of resilience. I wasn't just a survivor. I was a force becoming something that was unstoppable. And seeing my pain as purpose was a mental health pivot. I used to see everything. I used to see that everything I went through as a punishment. I felt like I was cursed, like I'd done something in the previous life, that I'd done something in this life that made me have to go through this. Like I was marked from the beginning to carry the weight that I didn't ask for. But when I started to reframe my experiences and stop asking why and started to start asking what, now know why now, what now, I began to understand that my story, as painful and as raw as it was, held power. That the same pain that almost killed me could become the same pain that helped someone else's life. I chose to see my trauma as training, training that shaped me into a woman who knows how to lead, how to love, how to see people in their darkness and remind them that there's still light. This wasn't about toxic positivity or pretending that things didn't hurt. It was about shifting the way I carried it. I chose to believe that nothing I went through would be wasted. That every time I got up, every time I kept going, it would have been easier when it would have been easier to quit. That was me reshaping myself into a version that I was always meant to be. Refrain was how I took my power back, not by forgetting, but by refusing to let it define who I am becoming. This was a point in my life where I honestly felt like, you know, there was a point. There was a point. There was a point. I'm sorry. Again, I wasn't really prepared, so you guys just bear with me. But there was a point in my life where I honestly felt like my in-laws didn't like me. Then I did that. Then maybe I didn't deserve to be with my husband because they didn't like me. That's how deep those wounds ran. It wasn't about them. It was about how I felt growing up. I felt overlooked. I felt picked apart. I was always trying to be enough for the people who already made up their minds about me. They just made up their minds about me. And when I started hearing the things that they would say, when I felt the coldness in the room when I walked in, it brought all of those old feelings back that never left. I found myself second guessing everything. about how I spoke, how I laughed, how I showed up, and wondering if maybe I was really the problem because everyone seemed to hate me. It hurt in ways I didn't know how to talk about at that time. I told myself that I could be more, if I could just be more agreeable, if I can make myself smaller, maybe I could change their opinions about me. I put myself on trial in my own mind and I picked apart everything about me, trying to figure out what was so unlovable. And the worst part was I was going through this when I lost my son. I was alone. And I was so focused on earning their acceptance that I didn't realize that I was abandoning myself in the process. I wasn't allowing myself to mourn. I wasn't allowing myself to grieve. I did not have an opportunity to mourn or grieve my son in the year that I should have been loved. Um, but when I started this healing journey, when I truly began understanding the power of reframing, something kind of shifted in me. I stopped asking, why don't they like me? And I started asking, why does their opinion feel so powerful? Why does it matter what they think about me? I looked in the mirror and asked, who taught me that someone else's approval is the measure of my worth? The answer was clear. The constant messaging from a world that teaches Black women that we must shrink ourselves to be accepted, that we must be twice as good to be half respected, and that our power is the problem. Reframing was rejecting that entire narrative. No. And slowly I started to see myself. The hate they showed me was less to do with me and more to do with the parts that refused, the poor parts of me that refused to stay silent, the parts that were healing, the parts that weren't going to be controlled. I realized that I had become the mirror that they didn't want to face. They had to look at themselves. So instead of carrying their rejection like it was a wound, I started treating it like a filter. Their reaction said more about them than it ever did about me. And that shift, that reframe gave me freedom. Freedom to stop chasing love from people who didn't know how to love themselves. Freedom to stop begging for a seat at a table that was never set for me in the first place. And most importantly, freedom to choose myself. I didn't want to sit at that table. Once I got in and started to see, I don't even want to sit in this table. Their rejection mirrored the societal resistance to my healing, to my visibility, and to my truth. So it just kind of was throwing back in my face the things that I felt in the first place, the shame I felt, the internalized stigma that tells people in the BIPOC community that their mental pain is invalid, inconvenient, or dangerous. Because that was the time I should have been seeing a therapist. I needed mental validation, but that was taken from me, from people who at the time I thought was everything, but now I realize didn't even matter. I didn't always rise gracefully. This wasn't something that was like one day I woke up and everything was better. Most of the time I crawled. Sometimes I stayed down longer than I wanted to. Like today, again, I had my speaker show, but there was, you know, things that didn't happen right. Normally I would have torn myself down. Oh my God, I'm a failure. No, no. The fact that I showed up shows resilience. And you know what? That's still growth. Excuse me. That's still growth. That is resilience. People think that it looks like strength or confidence, but for me, it looked like tears in the dark, asking the universe, why do I have to keep fighting? It looked like dragging myself out of bed when everything in me wanted to just disappear. Turning off this summit when things don't go right. You know what? Just give up. No, it wasn't some warrior charging through life. I was a woman holding myself together with shaking hands, refusing to let go. This is what mental endurance looks like when you are fighting trauma, depression, and the cultural pressure to be unbreakable, to be strong. There were days I didn't think that I couldn't take another hit. Like, I can't do this anymore. Life just kept swinging and swinging, and I was just trying to stay conscious from the blows. Just, oh my goodness, I felt like I was in a Rocky movie, and a Rocky was always an underdog, but he still got up swinging, and he always, most of the time, he came out successful. Well, that was me. But even in the middle of that chaos, there was a tiny flicker in me, like a stubborn little spark that kept saying, "You're not done." And I wasn't. Every single time I got back up, it wasn't because I had it all together. It was because I knew that staying down would let society win, and I couldn't let that happen. It would let whatever was trying to steal my purpose win, and I couldn't let that happen. So when I talk about rising, I'm not talking about some picture perfect moment. I'm talking about those ugly, painful, silent victories, the kind where no one sees you get back up, but you know you did. I don't care if you rise messy. I don't care if you scream or cry your way through it. Just rise. That's the part that matters. That's what changed everything for me. Reframing. Reframing survival as a mental health victory. People don't understand that surviving is powerful. Not in the look at me, I made it kind of way, but in the I should have been gone. I should have been dead. I should have been just completely gone, but I'm still here kind of way. Surviving isn't passive. It is a fight. Don't get it twisted. It is a fight. Every single time I wanted to give up and I didn't, that was a fight. And the quiet refusal to quit, that that's where I found my strength. Not because it got easier, because it still isn't easy. I'm going through things to this day. Are they as traumatic? No, but it is still a fight that I have to go through. But because I decided I was worth fighting for, even when no one else saw it, I still rise. The things I survived gave me a deeper understanding of myself. I started to see my pain as something that I could build with, not just something I had to carry. That shift didn't come easy for me. That didn't. I had to do the work. I had to sit with the hard stuff, with the ugliest parts of myself, and still choose. I still had to choose to believe that I could grow. I used to think that being broken was being weak, because that's what we were taught. We were taught that having a mental health crisis is being broken, and being broken is being weak. Now I know that it just means that I had a lot to heal from, and I'm doing that piece by piece. That growth turned into power, real power, the kind that lets me walk into a room with my head held high, not because I've never seen hurt, not because I've never experienced failure, not because I've never had setbacks, but because I chose to fight for my own mind. I stopped focusing on how long it was taking to heal and started giving myself credit for not giving up. That shift changed me, because healing isn't a straight line. It isn't just this easy path. It's messy, and I had to learn how to ride those waves. Now, emotional endurance is a part of me, not because life stopped being hard, but because I know how to hold myself through the hard. I know that no matter what today brings, I've survived the worst. I remind myself that every single time things get heavy, I'm not fearless. I'm just not willing to let fear win. That's what keeps me going. Not strength in the traditional sense, but strength that's been earned in the dark. Quiet, real, honest strength. Not just letting someone punch me in my face and saying that it is okay. To express those boundaries and say that it's not okay. The strength that it takes to fight for my peace. Self love is also the foundation of mental reclamation. And self love is also something that I have struggled with. I felt that if I did things for myself, that it would be selfish, not self love. I wanted those who I love to know how I felt, because I never felt love. So I poured all of myself into these people, including my children. So for me, self love didn't come in a pretty package. It wasn't candles and bath spas and spa treatments. And self love was the conscious act of choosing to protect my own peace and my own mental stability from anyone or anything that made me feel small or invisible. And even though I didn't erase the pain, it gave me something solid inside of myself, something that whispered, "You are worthy." Even when they don't see it, you are worthy. That foundation is what saved me. And I still build on that every single day. People talk about self love like it's just this cute little switch that you flip on one day and just boom, confidence. Boom, high, your self esteem is good. Boom, you're healed. But that's not real. And for me, it was a war. It was crying in silence after saying something kind to myself that I didn't feel was true. Oh, you're so beautiful. Oh, and I don't believe that. It was repeating affirmations with a shaking voice because the lies that were in my head that were taught to me were louder than the beautiful words that I was trying to train myself to believe. Loving myself wasn't easy, it was painful because I had to unlearn every voice that told me I wasn't enough. I had to unlearn the belief that my worth was conditional was conditional on my suffering, a belief that was passed down by systems of oppression and neglect. There were days I hated myself, not because I wanted to, but because that's what I was trained to do. It felt safer to reject myself before the outside world could do it again. One of the first things I had to do was pick up a journal. That was me. At first, it was just like kind of scribbles, rage, sadness, shame. But eventually, I started writing things to myself, not just about what hurt, but about what I wanted to hear, about softness. I am not what they did to me. And I also had to tell myself, my inner child, my inner shadow, that I am ready for this new part in my life. That journal was my first step in externalizing the pain instead of internalizing it. A powerful cognitive shift. That was a powerful cognitive shift that I had to take. The journal became a safe space where I could rewrite stories that I had been told. It became a mirror for the version of me that I was becoming. Therapy cracked something open for me too. For the BIPOC community, finding a culturally competent therapist is often the biggest barrier, but it is essential. It is an essential act of self love and radical boundary setting. So if you are out, shop for a therapist. There's nothing wrong with that. Find a therapist that works for you. I found a beautiful woman who was culturally sensitive and helped me understand what I was going through. Having someone hold a space for my truth without flinching was powerful. I learned how to name my needs, my boundaries, my feelings. I stopped apologizing for having emotions. I started saying no. That in itself was an act of love, choosing to protect my peace instead of constantly sacrificing myself to keep others comfortable. Meditation and affirmations helped me reconnect with my body. I would close my eyes, put my hands on my chest, and just breathe. Some days I didn't believe the words. I am enough. I am safe. I am loved. But the practice itself was an act of choosing wellness over trauma every single day. And eventually I started to feel and believe it. I started looking at my breakdowns differently. Instead of labeling them as failures, I began asking, what is this showing me about where I still need healing? That tiny shift changed everything. I started giving myself permission to grow. I started giving myself permission to fail forward. I stopped defining myself by my past, excuse me, and began shaping myself with my choices. And the more I leaned, into that growth, the more I trusted that mindset, the more I stopped fearing setbacks. They became lessons, not life sentences. The more I grew, the more I realized I was never stuck. I was scared. And once I stopped punishing myself for being human, I started to rise. My trauma was never my fault, but my healing was my responsibility. That realization hit me hard because it is my responsibility to heal. For a long time, my pain felt like a wall, something that was blocking me from everything I wanted. I hated that wall. I screamed at it. I crumbled in front of it. But over time, I stopped trying to bulldoze through it, and started building steps out of the rubble so that I could walk over it, just simply walk over it. And sharing my story, Breaking the silence for this community was a big, it was a big step in my journey. And at first, I was terrified to speak. For years, I held on to my story like it was a secret that would ruin me if it ever escaped my lips. I'm like, I can't tell. My family will be mad at me. This person will be mad at me. That person will be mad at me. But the more I healed, the more I realized that silence wasn't safety; it was suffocation. I was suffocating myself, trying to protect, trying to protect those. Sorry, my camera is not. See, these are other things. You have to fight through, but that's just life, and I'm going to fight it, and we're going to get this right. Sorry, you guys. So again, uh, I realized it wasn't safety; it was suffocation, and that's when I finally shared my truth publicly. I wrote a book, "A Place to Belong" by Perry Jasper, and that's something that you can find on Amazon. It shares my story in the full story. Um, and when I did that, something inside me, it cracked open. It did. The pain that I buried for so long suddenly had purpose. My words weren't just mine anymore. They became someone else's permission slip to breathe, to cry, and to begin again. I started doing coaching, and that wasn't a career move, it was a calling. Well, mentoring. And when I started helping others walk through the same darkness that I once swallowed, it lit a fire in me that I didn't know I had. Every event like this, every workshop, every book page I write is an offering. I don't show up as someone who has it all figured out. I show up as someone who knows what it's like to fall apart and still choose to rise. This isn't about being a savior, it's about standing next to people in their fire and reminding them you can choose mental freedom too. Community is sacred, and it reminds us that we are human and that we're wired for connection, not just joy, but pain too. This is especially vital for individuals in the BIPOC community where collective healing is essential. I found my strength in the arms of others, women who showed up raw, real, and unpolished. And in those circles of truth and storytelling, I began to unlearn shame. I didn't need to feel protected to belong. I just needed to be honest. And that changed everything. So now I show up for others because someone once showed up for me. I listen without trying to fix. I witness without judging, and I walk beside people in a way I wish someone would have walked with me. Service is my healing motion. In motion. Service is my healing emotion. I don't just offer mentoring, I offer connections. I don't just build events, I build safe spaces. And every time someone finds a piece of themselves in my story, I remember why I do this. Healing is a gift, and passing it on is the most powerful way I honor it. If there is one truth I want you to carry from this, it's that your story does matter. Not just the polished parts. Your story, your struggle for mental health or for mental peace is not an accident. You are the embodiment of survival and strength, and your story will shake mountains if you let it. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become after it. That may sound simple, it may, but it is the hardest, most powerful truth I had to learn. I spent so much of my life carrying labels that other people gave me: unworthy, broken, sensitive, too much, not enough. But one day, one day I decided to put all those labels down, not because they weren't heavy, but because I was tired of letting other people's pain define my worth, because that was their pain, not mine. Rising doesn't mean pretending nothing hurts. It means standing anyway. It means crying and still choosing to heal. It means grieving what should have been, then fighting like hell to be for what it can be. You have more strength than you realize. Every scar you carry is proof that you've already survived battles that some people can't even imagine. That's not weakness, that's resilience. So, especially to my sisters and brothers who carry the dual weight of personal trauma, the inherited weight of being in the BIPOC community in this world, who knows what it's like to be both overlooked and hyper visible. Your strength is a legacy. Your refusal to quit honors every ancestor who came before you. If that's you, just know this, you are not alone. You were never weak for feeling like giving up, ever, ever. We don't talk enough about how brave it is to keep going when everything inside of you says to stop. That's the quiet, stubborn courage. And that's the kind of quiet, stubborn courage that changes everything. And sometimes it tears you down. It looks like tears, shaking hands, or showing up when you'd rather hide. Again, sorry about the stuttering, but we get through this. That's being human. But that's where strength is built. It's messy. It's in the in between places where no one's cheering you on, but you're still fighting anyway. That's where your transformation begins. So if you hear anything I've said today, if you have heard anything I said today, let this be it, that your story is still being written. And just because you've come from darkness, it doesn't mean that you won't know light. Those moments are almost broke you. They're the same ones that shape your fire. You don't have to be perfect to be powerful, as you see. I don't claim to be perfect and I don't strive for perfection. I strive for healing. So you don't have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to rise again and again and again, because your strength isn't found in never failing. It's found in the conscious choice to prioritize your mental joy. I don't need to be fully healed to be worthy of peace or love. For so long, I thought that I had to be fixed to be before I could deserve anything good. And that shift set me free. Realizing that that's not the truth set me free. One of the mantras I repeat for myself is, I am not what they did to me. I am who I choose to become. My mental health is my mandate, or it is mandatory. It is my priority. I whisper this to myself on the days that I want to give up, on the days when my past comes knocking up. This becomes my anchor because it does come back. I lost a child. I deal with that daily. Thanksgiving was just a few days ago. Well, the holidays is coming up. This is a really hard time for me because next month, no, no, I'm sorry, this January marks 9 years that my son has been has been gone out of my life. So that is something that I have to repeat to myself during these hard times when I do want to give up. A journal prompt that made me confront my healing is, what part of my pain have I been carrying like a badge of identity, and what would it look like to lay it down, not forget, and stop letting it lead? This means putting down the generational burden of silence and seeking the mental support you deserve. This prompt pushed this prompt pushed me beyond my comfort zone. It asked me to get honest about the parts of my story that had built my identity, who I saw myself, because I have to look at the parts of pain that I have been carrying. It didn't mean pretending that the pain wasn't real. It meant asking myself if I was still letting those parts drive. Okay. And don't end this with inspiration. This is the invitation to act. Okay. So because I'm about to wrap up. You guys have been hearing me for a while. And it's easy to walk away from a powerful story and say that was inspiring. But what truly changes our lives is the action that you take for your own mental peace. This is your invitation to do something that you felt you needed to do. Don't let it fade with the next distraction. Healing doesn't start with a perfect plan, it starts with one step, just one. If something moves you, don't ignore it. Answer it, honor it, take the next step, no matter how shaky it feels, because this moment, it could be the beginning of your rise. This isn't just about a one time connection. If something, in my words, echoed in you, in your heart, I want to continue working with you. I invite you to watch my podcast. I share a podcast. I've been taking a break from it due to my own, but I have a podcast, Insights of a Survivor, on my YouTube channel, Empowered Voices Finding Strength in Survivors. There you can go and see so many powerful stories. I have interviewed so many men and women who shared their stories of healing and trauma, where stories like mine and yours are not hidden. Or you can come to one of my summits where we gather not to just speak, but to heal and to rise. You don't have to show up perfectly, just show up. Recently, I created a sorority for empowered women to rise, to help. Our motto is empowered women, empower women in sisterhood. It's called Nova Sorella. And you can find that at www.novasorella.org. O-R-G. You can learn more about joining this community or partnering with this community to help us rise. This program offers mentoring for young girls ages 14 to 20 who want to learn how to be successful in their adult life, who's also probably have to is currently or have dealt with generational or other types of trauma. Mental health is a big deal. And we have programs in our mentoring program that offers mental wellness courses to help you learn. But that's not it. We also do community projects that helps with everything: food drives, clothing drives, um, resources that can help, even if we have to refer to mental health support for those of us who, because we're not trained professionals, but we honor those who are, transfer and refer them over. These are ways that we can connect and help change, help me create change, help us rise together. Okay, so whether you're ready to sit in the back and listen, or step up, or step forward and share, this is a space for you. These aren't just events, these aren't just lifelines, they're reminders that you're not broken, you're not too overwhelmed, you're not too far gone to begin in the mental health journey. No matter what you have faced, no matter how long you've been carrying the weight of it, your story doesn't end in pain, it begins in power. It begins in the moment you decide that healing is yours to claim. Your mental health is yours to claim. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become in spite of it. And if no one else told you this before, let me be the first to say you are worthy of what that feels like, whole, free, and yours, and you have a right to keep rising. So with that, that is my speech. That is what I have to share about my journey in the mental health. And I hope that this story has touched you. So I see my sister, Miss Carol. She's a part of Nova Sorella. She's one of our sisters. Hi, sis. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for being a big supporter. This woman has supported me through so much. And I appreciate her. She has no idea how much I. She is one of the connections that I talked about. Do we speak every single day? No. But this woman is someone I know I can call when I say, hey, I'm going through a crisis. I need someone to help me. I'm feeling sad. I need someone who's going to show me this. She's someone who has shown me what love is. And I value her every single day. Um, so I'm going to end this summit right now with those words of choose you. Mental health, especially those in our community, is never easy, but it's always worth it. The fight is always worth it. And I thank you guys so much for coming out and hearing the story of Miss Rhonda and to hear my story of resilience. And if you missed today, you could come tomorrow. And I have another speaker lined up, Miss Jim, who's ready to share her story with mental health and how it can help make an impact in your life as well as mine. And I'll be sharing this story again tomorrow. So if you missed it today, Don't worry, you'll hear it again tomorrow. So thank you so much for coming out. Does anyone have anything else that they would like to share? Anyone has anything they would like to say? You are aware the stage is yours. And if not, I'm going to thank you all again for coming out and wish you the best holiday season, because again, this is the hardest time for a lot of us. Okay, so if not, then I'm going to actually look at the chat, because that's what I was looking for, was the chat. um, if not, we're going to say goodbye for now. And oh, thank you, Miss Carolyn. I'm sorry, I love this woman. I love this woman. She's watching from Miss Memphis. Thank you so much again. Um, And again, if you want to reach Miss Rhonda, don't forget you can reach her at yourtimetoheal.net. I will be adding that to the description of today's event on my YouTube channel. So let's just keep rising. Let's keep fighting, because this journey is ongoing. It's ongoing, and it takes a community to have this fight together. So, thank you guys again for coming out, and I will see